Welcome, valued viewers of Dare to Game, your premier one-stop destination for all the best in gaming right here on YouTube. I'm Nico, and let's just jump right into it. So this video is going to deal with a bit of a touchy subject, one that many consider sacred, while others may think of it as taboo. I'm of course talking about the Elder Scrolls, more specifically Elder Scrolls 6, and even more specifically, why I think that ultimately Elder Scrolls 6 will be a major letdown, in one way or another. So for starters, a little background information. The Elder Scrolls series is a series of games produced by Bethesda Game Studios, consisting of 5 main title games so far. These games include The Elder Scrolls Arena, The Elder Scrolls 2 Daggerfall, The Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind, The Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, and of course, The Elder Scrolls 5 Skyrim, the best of the bunch. Just kidding. Before you smash that dislike button too hard, I'm only joking. Everyone knows that Daggerfall is the best. But why don't you go ahead and leave your thoughts in the comments below? But seriously, in metrics of success, especially in the fiscal sense, Skyrim is by far the best performing game in the series, selling 22.7 million copies of the game worldwide. This is closely followed by Fallout 4 with about 20 million copies worldwide, which is the next most successful game the company has ever made. Why? Well, because these two most recent installments in their flagship franchises ditched the more complex and immersive RPG style of previous games in favor of a more simplified action RPG experience that appeals to a broader base. Still, they were, at least in my opinion, still great games, that I still play to this day. Why does this matter? Well, I'm glad you asked that, Other Nico, because it allows me to segue into my next point, which is what went wrong. The answer can be given in two formats, the short and simple, and the long and complex. The former being summarized by 7 words: The Elder Scrolls Online and Fallout 76. To expound on that statement, let me first explain what these games represent regarding Bethesda games. Bethesda made their name by building large, visceral, immersive, open-world, single-player RPGs. That is what built their impressive fanbase and has made them wildly successful and famous in the gaming industry. But unfortunately, they, like any business, have fallen down the rabbit hole that is games as a service. Who is to blame for this decay of gaming civilization? Well, I'll split the blame about 60-40, with the bulk of the blame going to corporate greed over passion for the project, and the smaller percentage going to consumers falling for these schemes time and time again. And by these schemes, I of course refer to pre-ordering games, buying season passes wildly, paying for microtransactions, and of course, supporting any type of game that is clearly a cash grab, such as Fallout 76, or basically any cookie-cutter MMO that really just wants as much of your money as possible while delivering the least amount of payoff. Now, let me be clear. I understand business. My major in college was business management. I understand economics. I understand common business practices. And I understand that at the end of the day, no matter the business, they have one primary goal, which is to make money. I get that. And I also understand that in the short term, at least with gaming, squeezing the cash cow for everything she's got can make a metric boatload of money. Just look at GTA Online, for example. In the run of GTA 5, they have made over $6 billion, the lion's share of which coming from microtransactions in GTA Online. To put that into perspective, that is the highest grossing piece of entertainment ever made, including any other games, books, movies, or songs. And it is still going strong. So it should be clear that obviously, this tactic of coaxing every dollar out of your consumers can be wildly profitable. However, unfortunately for Bethesda, that method really doesn't work for every IP. And for that, we can look to the most recent gaming failure, Fallout 76. Now, what does Fallout 76 have to do with the Elder Scrolls 6? They aren't even in the same series, and Fallout 76 is just a side project, a spin-off game if you will. It means nothing in the grand scheme of things. Calm down, Other Nico, I'm getting to that. The thing is, the Elder Scrolls games and the Fallout games have been closely linked since Bethesda acquired Fallout. Now, I don't mean that the stories are linked or anything, even though Nirnroot exists in both universes. I just mean that every time a new game comes out, it generally bears a very close resemblance to its most recent counterpart of the other franchise. For example, Fallout 3 is basically just an upgraded version of Oblivion, and Fallout 4 is just a slightly upgraded version of Skyrim. When you compare them side by side, Skyrim looks more like Fallout 4 than it looks like Oblivion. And that's basically because they don't evolve much between games. And this isn't always a bad thing, but the longer you wait between releases, the worse it gets. Especially when the only things you are changing are things nobody asked for. And that's where Fallout 76 comes in. Fallout 76 is the brainchild of someone at Bethesda that saw the success of games like GTA Online and even the moderate success of Elder Scrolls Online and thought, wow, what if there was a way we could tap into the Fallout universe and get that fan base to play a game with no substance, no content, and in the meantime hand over tons and tons of money for useless cosmetic items, all to play in a super grindy world with nothing that made the other games in the franchise special in it, and at that moment, that man was apparently put in charge of the kamikaze mission of making Fallout 76. Which, surprise surprise, hasn't done well. So what they did was try to make an online-only multiplayer game with essentially no point, no story, be the buggiest release to date, which would release to a tepid response that eventually turned into a massive failure. And my worry is that they haven't learned their lesson. So that is how Fallout 76 may negatively affect the Elder Scrolls 6. The lesson to walk away with from Fallout 76 is very simple. Your fanbase does not want that crap. We want large, immersive, single-player RPGs that we can sink hundreds, if not thousands of hours into, and still come back. We want a game that we stay up all night playing. Not because that's the only way to grind to a point where we can compete with someone else, but because it's so fun to play that we can't put the controller down. If Bethesda learns that specific lesson, then I don't see this being a lingering problem. However, anything short of accepting that this fanbase isn't interested in games as a service, and that any title they release with that intent will fail, is not sufficient. It's not about presentation, it isn't about bugs or glitches, or graphics, or community interaction. This issue comes down to the core issue in modern gaming. We want single-player games. Not that I think I've covered that well enough. Let's move on to the next reason why I think Elder Scrolls 6 is highly likely to disappoint. What I'm worried about here is hype. Now, inevitably, there will always be someone in the comments talking about how hype is a choice, and that you should just go into the game with low expectations. But the simple, cold hard fact is, unless you are brand new to the franchise, it is not possible to go into a sequel without expectations that the game will be, at the absolute least, match the quality of the previous one. So while Skyrim is certainly not everyone's favorite, it did very well, and not only held on to most of Bethesda's core fanbase, it also brought in so many new fans that it nearly doubled the amount of people in the world that know what the hell an Elder Scroll is. Unfortunately, this all means that for a lot of people, the hype going into Elder Scrolls 6 is going to be, in many ways, unprecedented. And in the realistic world, we should realize that there is almost no way they can live up to such a high expectation. But who is to blame for the bar being set so high? Surely it must be us fans for having unrealistic expectations. Well, the answer may surprise you. What do you think of when you think of Bethesda Game Studios releases? Is it the massive world you are about to explore? Maybe. Is it the acknowledgement that it is going to be buggy as all hell? Probably. I know those are some things that cross my mind when I'm booting the game up. But the first thing I usually think about is how long it's been since the last game came out. That's right, I'm going to talk about how Bethesda is one of the slowest companies when it comes to releasing the next game in their award-winning franchises. Now don't get me wrong, they aren't the only ones guilty of making fans wait years and years for sequels. For example, Rockstar and CD Projekt Red have a similarly slow release cycle, generally taking 5 or more years to release the next title in a franchise. However, when their games are released, they generally reach a critical acclaim that Bethesda has never seen. Take The Witcher 3 and Red Dead Redemption 2. 2 games that are widely considered to be the best games of this generation. So the long wait can work. But you know when it doesn't work? When the game that comes out is buggy as all hell on release, and the graphics and animations look like they are 3 or 4 years older than everything else coming out at the time. And this is literally every Bethesda release since Fallout 3. Why is this the case with every Bethesda release? Well, because they insist on using the creation engine for every game they make. The creation engine is the same fundamentally flawed and seriously outdated engine they have used for every game since Morrowind. That is a game that came out in 2002. For those of you who are bad at math, at the time of recording this video, that's 17 years ago. Sure, they have tweaked it and retooled it throughout the years, but every time they release a new game on it, the limitations become more and more obvious. What makes this problem stand out in this specific scenario? Well, that would be that Bethesda has confirmed that they will be using it again on Elder Scrolls 6. And if this game comes out, at the earliest estimations, it won't be until 2020 or 2021 at the earliest, because we don't even have a release date for Starfield yet, and that has been confirmed to be coming out before Elder Scrolls 6. And the reason all of this leads to massive disappointment from overhyping is because even if they release Elder Scrolls 6 in the fall of 2020, which is overly optimistic in my opinion, this game will be coming out 9 years after Skyrim, nearly double the amount of time we had to wait from Oblivion to Skyrim. And what will we have to show for it? A game that is likely to be riddled with bugs and glitches, doesn't hold up graphically because of the extremely dated engine, and will most likely feature multiplayer and will be jam-packed with microtransactions. So, in what realm of reality would that game live up to the expectations of fans who have waited nearly a decade for it? Now I realize that this video may have come off as a bit pessimistic, and that goes against the grain of my generally optimistic attitudes towards games franchises that I love. But the thing is, I don't believe that they have any good reason for these problems. When it comes to supplementing income, I get it. I understand that the idea of business is to make money. So either A, just make a good game that will garner critical acclaim and get you tons of sales, or B, stick to practices that gamers generally don't have a problem with, like large story expansion DLCs. Of course, I realize not everyone likes DLC, but in the case of Bethesda games, I think they've done a pretty good job. For example, Dawnguard, Dragonborn, Far Harbor, and Nuka World were all well worth the extra money in my opinion, because they added enough content to increase playtime by several hours each. So as far as the second point I've raised, there is really no excuse for this garbage. Back when Bethesda was a small operation, I bought the excuses. But now, they have lost all of their credibility. For one thing, they have more than enough money and resources to build a completely new game engine from the ground up that can blow the creation engine out of the water and give us a game that doesn't look or act like it came out in the late 2000s. And for another thing, they really need to get it through their heads that there is some middle ground between annual releases and waiting a decade between titles. While it may sound interesting that 20-year-olds who played Skyrim will be 30 when the next game comes out, in practice, it is more likely to alienate the fanbase, or worse, critically undersell because the audience no longer exists, or just no longer shows interest, because it's been too long. In conclusion, I would absolutely love to be able to say that Elder Scrolls 6 is my all-time favorite game, and that it was well worth the wait. I want it to be not only the best Elder Scrolls game ever, but the best game ever. Unfortunately, unless Bethesda takes the game seriously, makes it for their fan base, and not just to make money, and releases it before the 12-year-olds who played Skyrim are old enough to drink in the United States, I think Elder Scrolls 6 will be a major letdown, with potential to fail both fiscally and critically. Before you go, I was recently in a podcast about another game that we've been waiting a real long time for release, and that is Mount & Blade Bannerlord. So if you want to check that out, I'll leave a link in the description that'll lead you over to Frody's channel where you can see the video that I was in. So hopefully you go check that out. But in any case, thanks for watching and have a nice day. Congratulations on making it to the end of the video. If you did, I can assume you liked the content, and hopefully you'll subscribe and turn on the notification bell. If you haven't already, check out these links I have on the screen to see me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. If you like my content and would like to support what I do here, there's a link to my Patreon account in the description, and a donation would be much appreciated. In any case, thanks for watching and have a nice day.